I've been asked to tie the F-fly, which is probably the most deceptively simple fly on the planet. It consists of three things: a thread body, a head, and a bit of feather. The feather is CDC, called a canard or croupions, which come from around the peen gland of a duck. That's sort of down by its tail feathers, a gland that secretes oil, and these feathers pick up that oil, which gives them fantastic flotation properties. It also means that the feathers are very finely barbed, and gives them a lot of movement in the water, which makes them very sexy to trout. The fly is known overseas as the Fratnikova pukova. It's invented by a Slovenian fisherman called Marjan Fratnik in about the 1980s. It did to Europe what the Zak did here. It is a killer of fish of note on the murder fish with an F-fly. And the following day we had Simplicity and 2 CDC, called the canard, which comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. If I can show you, you get the oiler puff, and I don't have many of these. That is probably the best feather to tie an F-fly with if you're looking for a floating fly. Is that working? But the only place I know that sells them locally is Frontier Fly Fishing in Johannesburg. Otherwise you order them on the internet. And the nice thing is when you tie that feather down, it gives you that woolly effect you're looking for. The other feather that works by itself without any doctoring is, you can find it here, are your CDC selects, which are also, you can see, small endish feathers, and they also give you that nice frilly sort of profile. Unfortunately, these feathers aren't easy to come by, and they're damn expensive. So one tends to buy in bulk, which means you're buying this stuff, or what we're tying with today, this stuff here, and it doesn't really do the same thing. When you're tying an F-fly, the recipe says you can tie from a size 12 to a 20. On a 12 you use 3 feathers. When you get to 14 you use 2, and when you get to 18 you drop to 1. When you're tying for sterkies you tie lighter than that, because you're fishing the fly as a drowned caddis. You're fishing it behind a Zak, you're not fishing it as a floater, as a dry fly, and if you put too much CDC on, you'll never get the thing down. It'll float behind the Zak won't drag it. In fact, it'll hold the Zak up. So we tend to tie, and I can show you what happens here. I can find one now. There's one. I'll show you. Is that a single feather? That's not. I think there's a single feather. If you tie with a single feather, you get that, which doesn't really look great. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to tie on a variation. It's not in the recipe, that's how you tie this fly, but I'm going to tie a variation which gives you that sort of effect using sort of substandard CDC. That's probably a bit on the woolly side for a Sterkfontein, but it's a perfectly good F-fly fish to fish dry. They're fished very small. I've only fished 16s, 18s and 20s on this fly. Sterkfontein, you're fishing 16s and 18s. 18s are preferable. We're going to tie 16 today, just to try and improve the visibility a bit. The proportions of the fly are important. So that's really the only technically challenging thing about this fly. When we were there in November, the yellows were taking anything with orange in them. So I'm tying an orange body, and this is really easy. Just tie on your body to about where the hook starts to bend, and then you just bring it back again. And that is your body. That's simple. I'm going to seat this hook a bit better. It's not necessary, but I sort of like black heads. So at this stage, I tie off the orange thread and move to black. I'll try not to break it, which I've been doing a lot lately. Tie it forward to the front of the eye. Let's get that a bit neater. Just to give you something to bed. And a couple of turns back. One of the features of the airfly is it's got a big head. Now this is the trick. Let's use this feathers. If I tie that on like that, you're not going to get a great effect. So what I've been doing lately, and it gives you a nice effect, is you strip it and you tie this on in bunches. All you do is left hand, grab a few feathers, pull, a couple of loops down. Doesn't matter if it's messy, and you do it again and just build up. You've got to tidy it all up later, and it's the greatest. Where's that feather gone? Dave Weaver, who guides at Stokefontein, says tie these flowers light. I tend to like my flowers to look a bit bushier, so I probably overdo it a bit. You trim the head off. Helps to have sharper feathers here, scissors to do this. Try not to cut the thread. And very importantly with this fly is you've got to take a loop behind the wing to bring it up. You pull it and get that nice and prominent, so it builds a profile. What the fish are seeing is that profile, that wing. And a bit more trimming here. And it's a case of tying in the head, tying it off. And you can varnish or not as you prefer. The recipe calls for varnishing. I'm not going to do it this time. The last thing is this fly, and I don't know if this will show. This fly is cropped. That's the F fly. Where's that showing? There we are. That's what it looks like. That's a good dry version of the F fly. See how bushy it is. And you crop off the feathers, the CDC, just behind the bend of the hook. Better scissors. So, and I tend to overdo this, but about there. You cut it off. That's what it looks like. That's a good dry version of the F fly. See how bushy it is. And you crop off the feathers, the CDC, just behind the bend of the hook. Better scissors. So, and I tend to overdo this, but about there. You cut it off. And there you are, that's the fly.